This is a really important upfront for all of us, for all of you. Last year, as we were moving into and through COVID-19, the pandemic that unfortunately we still are in so many ways, getting better, but still a major concern for your brands and your employees and team members and families. Last year, there was a coming together. The word was flexibility, and it was almost empathy last year. We were all in it together, the buyers, the sellers, the brands, the tech companies. We were moving forward together. And this year, the words that I'm hearing most are market correction, this is an inflection point. We're hearing 25 to 30% CPM increases on linear content. And we're also looking at changing faces, changing relationships. So what I'd really like to get started with is real understanding of how are you and your clients looking at this upfront? What's your view as we head closer toward it this year? And what are your priorities? And I'm going to ask you all, since we have limited time, don't wait for the question. You have something to say, jump in, and think of ourselves being like, up on a stage at the Marriott or the Hilton or one of the many places where we've been on stage together. So Maureen, let me start with you.
Okay. Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me. No, we're not at the Hilton. I'm in my 9-year-old son's bedroom where I've been for the last year, but happy to be here. Yeah, I think the marketplace is, as we've said many times before, it's increasingly complex in a world of fragmentation. The rating points in linear are down significantly, at least 15 to 20%. The streaming within those platforms has not made up for that fragmentation. And we're finding that the supply is outside of those sort of that ecosystem of broadcast. So our priorities right now are making sure that we are finding those areas of opportunity for the supply. I think while, yes, there's challenges in that space, the opportunities that we can find, whether it's in other OTT partners, online video, social, influencers, actually, we find that the opportunities are great, right, to go and reach consumers in new and different platforms. So that part of it's really exciting. So I think while we can talk about a bit of the difficulty on one side, the other side is that it's just so much for us to go out there and buy and to connect with consumers in new and different ways. And actually, I would argue even in more impactful ways. So for us, it's really about finding those new opportunities, figuring out new ways to leverage our high value audiences and drive growth for our brands. And then also just leveraging new technology out there. So how do we really find new ways, again, to drive that deeper engagement beyond just broad reach? So again, there's lots of excitement. And I think we're just trying to navigate this complex marketplace that we're in and really figure out the best way to drive those connections.
So, the words you're saying are not much different than we've heard in the past. There's the buy side, there's the sell side. But what it often comes down to is what is the mindset of the client? Mindset drives 90% of decision making. Is the mindset changing, Mike?
Yeah, I think it is. I think 14 months ago we were on this.
Two mics. I'm sorry. We'll come to
you. I'm technically Mike.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think 14 months ago, we were all feeling very ambitious about a, transformational type of change, and that there was a lot of motivation to do that. And then of course, COVID came. And then I think consumers took over and they started to dictate and come and take a little control. And I think everybody started to realize that the changes that needed to happen in the marketplace. We, of course, like you said, took a step back. There was a lot of partnership. There was a lot of just helping businesses survive. And now we're back here again. And I do think that the opportunity that sits in front of us is great. Like consumers have proven they want great content. I think our advertisers and our brands are recognizing that there are a lot of changes happening in the market, and that it really almost in a way like hit them smack in the face. They experienced it themselves right in front of their faces and their families in the way that things change. So yeah, I think clients are definitely motivated. I think they're being held to more performance driven metrics. So we need to focus more on business outcomes. I mean, branding is like it's a nice to have these days, because every dollar they spend has to be so impactful. So we need to use the data and tech that we have in the marketplace.
So in that context, Mike O'Connor, do you see this as an inflection point in terms of change, with clients being more receptive to moving inventory away from linear and more into let's call it non-major player alternatives?
Yeah, I think, over the last couple of years, I think we've done a lot of educating ourselves and our clients in terms of kind of the shifts in consumer behavior and where viewership is going. Mike touched on the idea of, people are leaning more on performance-based metrics, which, from where I sit, part of my role is on the performance marketing side. And I've seen that as a huge benefit, brands like Peloton and Smile Direct Club, who have access to sales data in real time. We've actually seen that these channels perform better than linear TV. So I think being able to drill down and look at some of those metrics enables us to push a little harder into those areas. Yeah, yes.
Good. So Gibbs, rather than following up on that, I want to ask a different question. In the last couple of days, there have been some announcements coming out of GroupM about kind of a refocusing of some of the media buying strategies, more focus on some DEI related relationships, announcing a relationship with Ozzy. How does that impact on your day-to-day as you look at the upfront?
I mean, I think it impacts it in lots of different ways. The day-to-day, we've always been looking at that. I think the difference is now that we're publicizing it, and I think it's about creating opportunities to support new storytellers, new opportunities in the marketplace. I think that you've talked about sort of an inflection point, and I think we are at an inflection point, but I think it's about entirely changing the model. The value proposition of a lot of platforms is not the same as it once was. And clients have realized that, agencies have realized that, and we're trying to pivot to change all of those different metrics and things like that. Just spending more for less, if the average Prime rating is under a 1 at this point in time, what am I really getting? And how do I manage excessive frequency? I think we need to take it a step further and really drill into effectiveness and what is the value proposition of each individual impression. I agree that performance is important, but without brand preference, there is no performance. You need to understand. So it's like, where is that model and how do you build those equations? I mean, I think, look, we're all looking for, the best piece of value and opportunity from a client standpoint. You look at, Kong and Godzilla, how that did this weekend. People are trying to get back to cinema and go. Cinema is actually growing or potentially growing versus the last year versus prime time where it's shrinking. So I think there are lots of opportunities in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Finding those and changing the conversation with clients to really talk about the value versus where I need to be.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we talk a lot about fragmentation, and to Gibbs' point about looking at cinema, I think as as the world becomes more fragmented, you have to look a little deeper, and you can't rely on the same kind of, you need to go beyond the standard set of kind of consideration. I think there is a ton of opportunity out there.
So, I'm going to try to, I'm listening to the words, and I'm thinking now, if Linda, Rita, Joanne, Donna, Rob, if the different players are here listening, and their responses, yeah, I'm hearing all that, but we have all those opportunities within our own family. And if you want your piece of the linear, and especially the live linear, the sports and the other assets, and if your clients want those, then you're going to have to buy our digital, and you're going to have to move down, and you're going to have to pay our CPM. And historically, they'd be right. So go ahead, Gibbs.
What I would argue is that you can build a significant replacement across the board. I mean, you can utilize Cadent to replicate all of the Disney cable networks and get, the same content and everything else. So there are opportunities to do that. I think, yes, can we try to make it work? Yes. Can we try to figure it out? Absolutely. Are we going to? Yes. But I think that the onus then also comes to them to help us with different replacement options and to actually push measurement further. And I'm not talking about Nielsen measurement, but I'm talking about how do I measure or manage frequency across, Disney as well as Hulu? How do I do that across their ABC FEP as well as Hulu inventory? And those are things that are really important because it's not just about giving them more money, but it's also about providing solutions across the board. And that's not a unique Disney thing. It's sort of across the entire ecosystem.
Is it fair to say that Gibbs' comments, you would feel the same way, Maureen, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Yeah, listen, I think the reality is we are going to work with all those partners, but you can't reaggregate the scale that we used to have. You can't. So we are buying all of the digital or the social, but you can't reaggregate it in that ecosystem. So you have to go outside of it in order to get back to the reach. And to Gibbs's point, we're over frequency, right? Like, and some clients like that. Most clients, though, it's about incremental reach. And the only way we can get that is to go outside that ecosystem. So we are going to work with the partners on the assets that they have. We are going to work within that, but we'll never get back to the reach that it used to be. So I think that that's just the reality that we're in, but we are willing to work with them across there. We want to reach by their content wherever it lives. That is the intention. But we do want to make sure that we're managing the investments carefully because of the limitations that there is within the scale. And that's just the reality of it.
I think, Jack, that just the legitimacy of the competition has changed. There is so many more partners that we can work with that have proven to be effective. So yes, TV still works, right? There's still a portion of it. There's a lot of value in it. We're not walking away from TV, but I also think everybody thinks what TV is so different today. To Jim's point in the opening, like the way his daughter watches TV, the way my daughter watches TV is far different than the way that we grew up. So I just think there is so much more opportunity. The competitive set has changed, and the value that we place, it can't be based on what the value was 10 years ago. I think we chatted about this when we were prepping, like the American Idol story is a good one, right? Like for years, we just kept paying the increase and then realized, wait, well, now it only does a 2 rating when it used to do a 20. So we have to revalue that. And I think that's an important part of this year's negotiations.
And as we shift, go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
When you think about American Idol, it does a 2 rating on the linear portion, but there are so many viewers outside of that linear. And when you go beyond just kind of, days 4 to 28 or whatever it is.
Let's shift a little bit to the dollars you have available this year. Now, we know that the dollars are more than 2020. The question is, are we looking at the same kind of budgets available to you as 2019, or do you see growth in the market if we just use an apples to apples 2019 versus 2021? And I'm not just talking about the upfront, I'm talking more about calendar year and full year budget availability. Are we looking at a static? Are we looking at growth coming from the scatter into the upfront, or do you envision a growth market versus 2019?
I think it is potentially up a little bit. Obviously, from a GroupM standpoint, we've published what our reports are. Magna and IPG have published what their reports are. So, I think we're all safe to say. I think the challenge is, what does that mean? Because as we're talking about what is a video marketplace, there is the video marketplace. That doesn't mean it's all going to TV. It could be going to YouTube. It could be going to Unwired. It could be going back to local. Local provides a great opportunity where you're not seeing the same sort of linear ratings erosion as you are on a national scale. Social video, there are tons of different platforms, and looking at different ways to drive effectiveness goes. You talk about, the streaming services and things like that. It also depends on the category. So if you look at a category like pharma, pharma has little opportunity in some of the streaming services because of the long form creative, like, where you change the consumer experience to have fewer minutes per hour and shorter breaks means it's harder to then cram a 90-second commercial. And it also depends on what their content strategy is and how they're building their breaks. So it is a mixed bag, but I think it's safe to say that not every platform will be getting the same amount of money as year ago.
And as you look, let's say, out to 2023, 2024 from an addressable OTT point of view? Let's focus in on addressability. We're on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's say in 2024 we're at a 8 or a 9. Where are we today? Are we at 7? Are we at 3 in terms of the opportunity that you have to use addressable as a solution for your plans?
Addressable TV, or
Yeah.
you mean
Addressable TV.
probably a 5, maybe?
I was going to say under 5.
Yeah, maybe.
I think
All right.
I think you have to look at it not necessarily as addressable TV and set-top box VOD, but as, you know,
Right.
sort of digital and OTT. So Roku, Trade Desk,
Right.
you know, Samsung, Vizio, you know, any one of the OTT partners, you know, Amazon, IMDb, like everything and anything, even as far as YouTube from a connected TV standpoint. I think, you know, the value proposition is about serving impressions to people who are receptive at that point in time. And,
Yeah.
you know, in a leaned in experience, they're far more engaged versus, you know, sitting back watching, you know, something that is being sent to me versus something I chose to watch.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are migrating to that world. And so that's going to be, you know, where the future is across the board.
And
Yeah,
you
I
each
mean-
have your data groups. Go ahead, Maureen, and then I'll come back with a question about
I was
data.
just going to say, for us, addressability, we're using addressability is about our high value audiences, and we're using addressability in the digital way, right? Because we're using television for most clients for broad reach. And so we do have pockets of addressability there, but we use addressability and we're using audiences in all of those other places. So that's why, like, addressability has already happened. It's, yes, there might be opportunities for TV, but really it's in the digital world, and which is where we've already been doing that for years and where we'll continue to. But I think it's really using that more within an OTT space is where we're seeing the bigger opportunity.
And
I think, I would just add, you know, I think, you know, platforms like Dish with their Reach Booster product help us expand reach in a different way. So, you know, it's true that reach quickly is more challenging, but I think addressability, even from a linear perspective, gives us the opportunity to expand reach in a way that is different than it has been in the past.
And where are your organizations in terms of moving from traditional demographics and buying metrics to performance-based, as well as toward the 18 plus total audience? And, you know, how much change can we expect to see in how research is used and what research providers are being used? Maureen, anyone want to take that?
I mean, yeah, we've already been, I mean, obviously IPG acquired Axiom. So we are,
Exactly.
we did that several years ago. So obviously we did that so we could own the data and we could build out our high value audiences and then be able to transact on those audiences in an end-to-end fashion and then measure them and repeat, right? So we're already on that track, and we've been on that track for years, doing it across all channels in television too, buying against, again, high value audiences. So I think we'll continue to use those high value audiences to buy against and expand them even deeper as we move forward. But for us, it's really about then how do we really measure the impact of that? Are they is in television, is buying a high value audience more impactful than buying 18 to 49? And is that really working when it comes to business performance? So I think that's an area that we'll continue to expand upon in this coming upfront. But I think that's just been a key part of our strategy for years and will continue to be. And then I think on the demo part, I think it's something obviously we are exploring where it makes sense to switch into broader demos with maybe advanced targeting on top of that. So I think that will become a bigger part of the conversation, especially in a world where supply is very limited. How do we really open up that lens of supply and using those broader audiences in which to do it? So I think it will be a part of the conversation. I can't tell you right now if that's going to be 75% of the conversation, will be 20% of the conversation. I think we're still working through the analysis on that, but certainly shifting into high value audiences is where we've been and where we'll continue to go.
Thanks, Maureen. And final words, Mike O'Connor.
No, I guess just to build on what Maureen said, you know, when you think about where a lot of the growth in spend in the marketplace is coming from, it's from more performance-driven marketers, whether it's, you know, D2C clients streaming. And I think that those guys are, you know, not necessarily as tethered to the past in terms of metrics, and we'll be looking at performance performance differently. So I think
Thanks for being here. Mike Law, final words.
Yeah, I just think we have to really challenge ourselves this year. I think we've had a lot of opportunity during the last 12 months to test some different things. I think we've experimented with new currencies, new targeting, and I really believe they're scalable and using different platforms to help execute off of data, whether it's Merkle for us or Axiom or whoever it might be for the other agencies. I just think there's so much opportunity to have a really transformational marketplace this year.
Thank you. Mike Gibbs, final words.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to sound like a broken record, so if I do, I apologize. But I think it really, as with every marketplace, it's really about the value exchange. And it's about what's important to us and our clients and what's important to the networks. We will always find middle ground to work through that. But I think at the end of the day, those value equations are changing at a much faster pace than they have been in the past. How much of it is about audience versus how much is it about context? Where do those places fit together? You've seen it with big events and things like that, not performing the way they have. But again, if we can find middle ground and drive value, that needs to be the equation. Not about price, not about CPM, but it's about who's my audience, where am I finding them, and what's the value exchange for them.
And before we move to our next conversation, I'd like you to give me a thumbs up. We're past the inflection point. Flat, we're at the inflection point. We're still not at the inflection point. Each of you give me thumbs up, thumbs flat, thumbs down, inflection point. Thumbs up, thumbs up. We're past the inflection point. We're in the next 30 years after a 30-year transformation that started with the Internet Mosaic browser in 1993. Gibbs, Maureen, Mike, thank you so much. And on behalf of Cadent, I know they're very appreciative of your taking this time, as is the industry, for the work and the leadership that you've always shown. So thanks for being here today, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks.
So as we transition to